On a royal purple rectangle, a golden yellow stylized microphone appears. Then, 3 fuchsia people icons on the left and 3 blue people icons on the right fan out behind the mic, the PANAcon logo. The words virtual conference and PANAcon slide into view below the logo. Next, the word Keynote appears. The whole image shifts upward and becomes smaller, making room for the words Robin Miles, Voxpertise. Now, Robin, a light-skinned black woman with short salt and pepper hair, smiles. She is wearing a vivid orange, short-sleeved linen shirt, short dangling gold earrings, and a simple gold necklace. To her right and slightly in front of her is a microphone covered with a wind foam mic sock hanging upside down on a boom.
Welcome. Greetings to everyone, and thank you for inviting me to kick off this first ever Professional Audiobook Narrators Association conference. I am honored to be asked. Thanks also to our sponsors, the PANA Board of Directors, Christine Mascott, and the entire PANAcon planning team, without whom this could not have happened. Before anything, I want to acknowledge all our members whose patient attention to the annual survey is what guides this ship of ours into the future. Let me also acknowledge the debt we owe to founders Emily Ellett and Emily Lawrence for recognizing what we narrators needed and having the dedication and focus to carve out a community-oriented place to educate, support, and uplift audiobook narrators. I'm excited to contribute to the conference as we share wisdom and ways and collaborate to meet our shared challenges. We audiobook narrators are a lot of things. Actors, directors, solo entrepreneurs, indie producers, editors and engineers, social media and marketing mavens, all in addition to our roles as partners, parents, teachers, activists, and a host of other jobs we often need to do to keep ourselves afloat. In the midst of all that noise, I want to remind you today of our collective identity, our common root. We are storytellers, first and foremost. But I think we overlook how primal, connective, and magical that is. Storytelling is primal because we are wired from birth to respond to speech and learn from narratives, from story. Our brains have, and I quote neuroscientists Christopher Comer and Ashley Taggart, a pre-existing competence for oral language arising as far back as 100 to 150,000 years ago. Cognitive systems in our brain for reading have to be created from scratch. Stop and consider for a minute how profound that is. Images come to my mind of a fire pit at night, storyteller circled by the tribe or village citizens, listening enthralled. It could be Norway, Nigeria, Nagasaki, or New Orleans, rapt by the storyteller's gift with words and inflection. It's why every holy book ever written uses parables of one sort or another, stories to teach the people about the origins of the universe, the origins of humanity, about right and wrong ways to be in the world. The fire pit may be gone, and everyone in the village now has earbuds. But the job of the weaver of stories remains the same. The storyteller helps the people make sense of life experiences, their own and that of others. And on its simplest level, stories, songs, and poems too, as they pass from mouth to mouth, keep the gift of speech alive and extended. Narration is connective, because stories link us to the collective unconscious of humanity, to that web of experiences held in common. But those parts of ourselves that cross the bounds of ego to the collective must be constantly articulated and shared in order to keep that collective spirit alive. We do that. We express the spirit of our communities, whether it be localized and specific, defined by location, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, or much more universal, encompassing all of humanity, aging and death, are the ultimate universal experiences we must all navigate eventually. Writers use their gift to create a tapestry of chapters and story arcs, combining human lives, images from their psyche, ideas and feelings, entrusting it then to the narrator. With our gift, we embody and extend the reach of that tapestry across time and space, moving, linking deeply, tangibly with other listeners. In fact, simultaneous narrator-listener brain scans reveal that a listener's brain activity mimics the narrator's. This brain-brain coupling is proof of what happens when we share stories orally. A good storyteller puts listeners on the same wavelength, literally. Something invisible, but for the help of a PET scan, but definitely felt. The connection is there like a spider's web we cannot see until a light hits it or until dew clings to it. We get caught in it and we can feel it. It's an apt metaphor others have used too. Emily Dickinson used the spider as metaphor for the unappreciated artist, the neglected son of genius, in her poem, Cobwebs. The spider as an artist has never been employed, though his surpassing merit is freely certified by every Broom and Bridget throughout a Christian land. Neglected son of genius, I take thee by the hand. Walt Whitman equated the spider with a soul, tirelessly seeking a link to others or a shared experience, in a draft of his 1862 poem, A Noiseless, Patient Spider. The soul, reaching, throwing out for love, as the spider, from some little promontory, throwing out filament after filament, tirelessly out of itself, that one at least may catch and form a link, a bridge, a connection. And halfway across the world in Ghana, there is Kwaku Anansi, the spider god of Akan and African diasporic folklore. He is a wily trickster figure, yes, like the Norse god Loki, Native American animal spirit Coyote, and Odysseus of Greek myth. But more importantly, he's considered the god of all stories, a master weaver, passing wisdom and morals through his stories. Webs of unseen but felt connection. You know, they look a lot like satellite images of transportation routes that connect different locations across the globe, web-like. And the visual mappings of neural networks of the brain, web-like. Is it coincidence? I don't think so. Lastly, and to me, this is the really interesting part, there's magic in what we do. We can transform experience, action, and emotion into pictures and sound in someone else's mind, and we do it with just our voices. We create the illusion that our listener shares the same space with us, and rather than them suspending disbelief, we actually allow them to believe, to see in their mind's eye, and to feel, even if only for the time it takes to complete the performance. Political and social forces, human drives, passions, loves, and hates cannot be seen literally. They are not corporeal, and because of that, they can be scary and powerful. Magically, we make the invisible visible, the unconscious conscious, the unspoken utterable and felt. How do we do the voodoo that we do so well? First, we stop time. Because metaphorically, time stops in the midst of a compelling performance. Then, transport them to an imaginary place. It's easier to recognize in theater and movies. Hollywood and Broadway have the benefit of special effects, lighting, and music. But think of a time listening to a compelling narrator when it felt like minutes passed, when in fact it had been hours. I experienced that suspension of time listening to our dear departed Richard Ferrone 15 years ago when he lent me a copy of his Mortal Prey audiobook.
When he put the rifle to his cheek, the scope fogged over in a matter of seconds. The shot would have to be a quick one. No matter.
The drive, from Boothbay, Maine to New York City after the audiophile picnic flew by without awareness of time passing. I was so engrossed. Richard was a master storyteller. Time stopped for me again in 2002, at 8.5 months pregnant, at a performance of The Vagina Monologues, just 4 women on stools, storytelling. The first stirrings of my contractions began on the subway on the way to the theater, but paused as the curtain went up, resuming much later in the wee hours of the morning before heading to the hospital for my 36-hour labor. Coincidence? I think not. In case this strikes you as too woo-woo, let me ground these personal experiences with hard science and how neurologists say brain science and narrative imagination overlap. The scientific consensus across cultures and times is that narratives fundamentally matter to humanity. In fact, according to Case Western Reserve University cognitive scientist and professor Mark Turner, quote, narrative imagining, story, is the fundamental instrument of thought, unquote. That we make sense of our world by creating core units of tiny spatial events or stories and combine them into longer and more meaningful segments. In nanoseconds, a narrator's senses respond uniquely to language and imagined story elements, link them to known or imagined experiences, discover causes and actions, blend figurative expression and humor from the right brain with rationality from the left, and voila! The listener is transported, removed from the real world to an imagined one. That is tremendously powerful, culturally essential, reaffirming of individual and collective humanity. We illuminate the drives, the fears, the passions of individuals and whole societies, things not visible to the naked eye, so they can be acknowledged, recognized, and reckoned with. That is one hell of a community service. Great storytelling has the potential to promote personal growth, understanding, and empathy, or to be disruptive and subversive. Dare I say, we are custodians on the front lines of teaching, maintaining, and sharing our culture, things desperately needed in the present moment. Speaking truths, your own and others, is unavoidably a political act today. We offer up our voices and bodies to reenact conflict, arousal, deep emotional pain, and joy, so listeners better understand events and the forces at work underneath them. We offer ourselves as proxies who process things that might otherwise frighten or intimidate when they stay hidden and unexpressed. Imagine all the people who find the courage to touch their own deep wells of emotions on the coattails of your own. The ability to tell a great story, well, is a talent, although one that needs to be nurtured, developed, and refined so it ripens. I've read and listened to a lot of narrator stories about how they got into the business. Sometimes they mean the overall business of acting, sometimes it just covers the business of narrating, but 2 things are consistent. 1, realizing they had a talent for it, and 2, having the driving desire to work at it till it shines. Then begins the process of learning about it, practicing it, taking feedback, getting to know oneself as an artist, and learning the tech and business side of the biz. That path is different for everybody, but let me share with you how I got here. I grew up loving Shakespeare, classics, modern drama, movies, and poetry, and later developed a taste for international, experimental, and expressionistic drama. Shout out to Sam Beckett.
Pictures of Robin.
It's not a mystery how I got here. My grandfather was a Shakespeare and Victorian poetry professor from Jamaica, West Indies, who recited lengthy classical speeches to me aloud from memory as a child. Not children's books.
an elegant painted
But
portrait.
what most people don't know is I was a dancer-singer when I started out and got my first paid gig at 17 years old, the Americana Review at Great Adventure Amusement Park in Jackson, New Jersey. I had innate talent at those two things, particularly dance. You could show me a step and I'd have it in seconds. Comedy I could do too, but acting in straight drama I found so difficult. I couldn't find that fearless honesty and seeming effortlessness the way I did when moving my body. But I think that's the reason why I wanted to crack this nut so badly. It was a challenge, and I like challenges. I applied to Yale College for its overflowing undergraduate theater scene, both musicals and plays. I got in and proceeded to audition for everything I could fit in my schedule. I mostly learned by doing my first 2 years. But constantly watching theater lit the path for me. I saw dozens of undergraduate productions, ushered at Yale Rep so I could see shows night after night, and even waited tables at the graduate cabaret so I could see those shows for free too. I didn't realize until much later how all that watching of live plays defined my artistic tastes. And it wasn't until I had seen a wide swath of what was out there that I could decide what kind of actor I wanted to be, what my own standards were. Oh, game on. I recognized the shape of what I wanted to become. Truthful, vulnerable, fearless. Not an end point of fame or salary to shoot for, but a craft end point. And after graduation, I sought out teachers and classes taught by dedicated pros I thought could catapult me forward. Oh, the vistas they opened up for me. I've had the immense honor and luck to have studied with actress Uta Hagen and director Bob Moss in New York City, actresses Prunella Scales and Billy Whitelaw and the Royal Shakespeare Company speech and voice teachers in England, and then my Yale Drama School faculty, Earl Gister, Barbara Somerville, Ursula Meyer, Wesley Fada, so many I'm grateful to. They patiently helped transform my dancer instincts into dramatic actor instincts. My classes and coaching completed, I thought I had everything I needed to forge an acting career. But work increased slowly for me, working a bit on a soap opera, doing commercials, live theater, industrials. I had an agent and the skills to do this job, but there were so few roles Black actors were allowed to audition for back then. Remember, this is pre-Shonda Rhimes. So, seeking a way to use my talent in service, I thought to volunteer to read audiobooks for the blind, an unknown genre for me, and approached American Foundation for the Blind in New York City, where I was instantly rejected on my first audition. Yep. It turned out this new genre had some different demands. There were no audiobook-specific classes or coaches to turn to back then. So I returned to the path that served me since college, listening to learn, noticing and note-taking, playing and practicing alone at home. I started listening to lots of library books and parts of library books on cassette back in those days, and re-auditioned 6 months later. I got the job and was paid after a minimum. Surprise, it was not a volunteer gig. But I wasn't finished with ear training or practicing just yet. Because just like watching lots of live theater helped figure out my basic actor sensibilities, lots of audiobook listening revealed my narrator sensibilities. I came to the studio every day, early and left late, so I could observe my veteran colleagues at work, basically lurking in the hallway outside the booths and turning on the microphone feed to audit their process. That ear training was invaluable to my mastery of this new, ancient, and oh so cool art form. Then I discovered a library of audio dramas on BBC Radio 4. I did another listening deep dive, and those instincts started to take shape. I started working regularly, recording for the National Library Service for the Blind, where they really utilized my ability with accents and my 2 languages. Then, soon after, for recorded books, and slowly other publishers, while back and forth between small regional theater jobs, Friday night theater sports improv shows, TV commercials, numerous film ADR gigs, even a Broadway show. But narration was becoming a specialty. Long story short, I attended Robin Whitten's Lobster Bake every summer for about a decade and consistently got noticed. I did APAC every year, became an APAC narrator track planner and APA board member, pivoted to directing and teaching when a mystery ailment derailed me for 2.5 years, returned to narrating once treated for my autoimmune issue, and self-engineering allowed me to expand to home recording. Ultimately, I built a substantial career as an audiobook narrator. I am so grateful. The challenges of late career differ from early or mid-career, as you probably know. But like everyone, I still have to protect my voice from smoke, alcohol, reflux, and overuse, and I worry about AI. Like many veterans, I worry about overexposure. Too many titles in a particular genre, and they start to want fresh new voices. Yeah, an opportunity for newer narrators, to be sure. I worry about starting to sound old stylistically or vocally, getting locked into a type. I've played countless slaves on countless plantations, even on other planets, and losing jobs when employers refuse to pay above minimum. You know the drill. It's been a blessing to be in demand. I have been very lucky to have found outlets for my talent for most of my life. And I've been teaching acting technique, script analysis, audiobook technique, Shakespeare, and accents in conservatories, including PACE BFA program, UCSD grad program, SUNY Purchase, and several other programs. I consider it my responsibility to help others develop their talent too. And here is where I have to address the elephant in the room. Talent is a gift. It is bestowed by, some will say, God, the universe, maybe our ancestors. And gifts are meant to be circulated, not coveted, not hoarded, not sold, as is the custom for a majority of cultures around the world. That which is given is supposed to be passed forward. So what is the artist to do with their God-given talent in a late-stage capitalistic society that only values maximum profit margins while seeking to compress fees for artists' services and ultimately replace the human artist with AI? Gosh, that was a mouthful. Voice theft and AI displacement loom as an existential threat. And there are devastating societal consequences to replacing human voices with AI voices, both for listeners as receivers of narrative and for us as performers of it. For listeners, intimacy will be lost or lessened. The feeling of being touched and transported will be lost or lessened, which is a major reason we are drawn to audiobooks in the first place. Since there is no physical AI body, that brain-brain coupling I spoke of earlier, that synced wavelength cannot happen. In fact, the robot voice will come between text and audience, flattening out what would have been a fully imaginative reader experience. In addition, nuances of figurative speech, the metaphoric and illustrative wordings we love so much, will resonate only as word clusters tacked to one-dimensional intonation. No more changes of action and tone mid-sentence as a realization hits. Humor, and especially irony, will lack that second moment of recognition and the slight chuckle or smile that accompanies it as it lands. AI is trained to include the larger universal emotions, yes, and sounds dangerously good for about 10 minutes. But 10 hours? Without a body to react uniquely to the complex imagined world of sights, sounds, touch, sense, specificity of human experience cannot happen. I believe that text will be stripped of deepened emotional intelligence that only a human provides. Like the robot vacuum cleaner that does an okay job, but can't even tell the corners are still dirty and random areas got totally missed. For us performers, AI siphons demand for human narration and our livelihoods are undercut, certainly, which means we will have to diversify our revenue streams. I don't mean to minimize that. But the effect on our psyches cannot be overstated. On a holistic level, when the marketplace interferes with the sharing of our talent, we stagnate spiritually. We get dammed up like a river prevented from flowing. Artists must use their gift, lest we experience anxiety, feelings of worthlessness, and the backing up of our life energy. It can affect our mental and physical health. So what can we do? We have to find ways to nurture ourselves and our communities during these rocky times of rapid tech advancement. The tech isn't going away, but we are smart, we are creative, and our superpower is connection and embodying empathy, interpreting causality in situations. The longer this societal disruption and disconnection lasts, the more folks will need stories to rebalance that primal part of themselves, to reconnect the bonds of humans, to rediscover the communal magic of the village around the fire, breathing in sync with the master storyteller and each other. We have to promote our own relevancy, my friends. Here's one thing we can do. As tech gets more and more impersonal, we lean into the personal. What might that look like? I think we need to consider live narration and audio drama events in small venues, and improv live audio drama with audience participation, say. Short story reading events, not necessarily the stand and deliver of selected shorts, but a short story read aloud with cocktails or coffee and childcare, just saying. Book club appearances, live and or online. And why not lead the way in places where AI voices might serve those in need, like those who have lost their voice due to injury or illness.
Now, a group of 6 actors at music stands with microphones on
For
floor booths.
about 8 years, I've been in a small audio drama company in New York City, Voicescapes Audio Theater. We bring our original audio plays to libraries and assisted living facilities once or twice a month. We don't do it for the money. We make a small stipend that pays for travel and lunch. We do it to keep our creative juices flowing, to have fun playing with each other and a rotating cast of guest artists.
It would not have stuck to the pan so much.
Are you actually criticizing my lasagna? That's my grandmother's recipe.
And it could use more basil.
How would you know?
And audiences really appreciate it. It's a win-win. If considering cloning your own voice, you will have to get comfortable talking about AI ethics, first off, with any collaborators or employers, and get a SAG-AFTRA contract in place for your own legal protection. You will have to research the fine print and behavior of any AI company you wish to work with. My personal experience has been very good so far. When the audio tour I'd been voicing for years needed to begin including AI, CEO and friend and editor of this video, Peter Nissen, paused product creation to engage SAG-AFTRA, then carefully screen voice cloning service providers so I wouldn't be exploited. Sandra Lukau, director of Vanishing: A Love Story, a documentary I voiced last year, brought up AI ethics in our first conversation, having already vetted some AI voice cloning companies. I consulted the union. We investigated different companies' user agreements and ethics statements and found one we felt we could trust. I provided the acting for a voice clone of author Kai Emmons, subject of this documentary about death with dignity.
A white woman with brown hair and glasses.
Slowly succumbing to ALS, she lost her voice, but continued to communicate via typing. I studied her interviews, body language and facial expression, and acted out what she said. The AI company synthesized her voice over mine, and her voice was restored naturally for the film.
Remember me
unbox
with
his
joy.
books.
This isn't going to be a grim film, I promise.
I'm so proud. Last month it won Best Documentary in the Manhattan Film Festival, and it has started a conversation about ethical and service-oriented AI voice cloning. Just imagine if Stephen Hawking had gotten to choose among realistic voice clones created perhaps by one of us, that he felt best reflected his sense of self. I believe we narrators can help lead our society back to a path of empathy for one another and prevent the erasure of stories that need to be heard. I trust that there will always be curious people and those who want things made by hand, the folks who want fresh baked instead of store-bought, who buy jewelry or crafts direct from the artist on Etsy, who prefer the personal touch of a VRBO over a hotel room. So allow me to humbly suggest 3 ways to keep your vital force flowing, to keep your gift in motion, especially when you have unwanted downtime in your production schedule. First, don't allow yourself to isolate, to lose the threads of your social web. Stay in contact with a wider community of colleagues, your narrator peers. Small groupings will do. Arrange to gather in person or over Zoom if distance won't permit, and read to each other. Do it over a meal, make it a celebration, a geek fest, or a solemn ritual. I don't think format matters, being in community matters. Read 5 to 15-minute passages. It need not be long chapters. Every storyteller needs at least one listener, and we can absolutely do that with each other, for each other. Just like Robin Whitten's magical reading aloud time after eating lobster all afternoon and socializing at her July picnic. We can create magical reading aloud spaces wherever we'd like. Second, consider searching through titles in the public domain. That is, titles not covered by copyright restriction, and recording parts of them. There's a virtual treasure trove of writing to use for narrating practice, or to begin self-producing if that's your goal. As a general rule, copyright expires 95 years after publication or 70 years after an author's death. To see what's available, start with Project Gutenberg to view lists of titles in the public domain. You're bound to find titles that grab you. Just make sure to verify public domain status. Other websites that list what's available and/or provide free downloads include Hothy Trust, Internet Archive, Creative Commons, Google Books, and your local library, 'cause libraries rule. I love historical fiction and record a lot of it. It's challenging, informative, and good performance practice to work on arcane speech patterns and sentence construction. Practicing with public domain texts sharpens your historical fiction skills. Third, if and when you can, volunteer to narrate for nonprofit providers of audiobooks like Learning Ally and the National Library Service. Since you're not responsible for editing, you can concentrate solely on performance, letting your talent flow through you. And you'll serve those who need audiobooks to access writing. In closing, here are 2 principles that help guide my steps forward. 1, A Prescription for Change by Swedish-Nigerian sociologist and author Mina Salami. What an idea makes us feel is just as important as what it makes us know. With the right elements, if the words have cadence, if the voice has beauty and passion, if the rhythm of the idea resonates with the zeitgeist, they catch fire and ripple into mainstream culture. To make an impact, we need to emotionalize the information we impart. However, we need to do so with great ethical care. And this declaration of the power of imagination by Professor and author Bell Hooks. What we cannot imagine cannot come into being. So, my PANA friends and colleagues, remember as you head back into your booth or head into a commercial or publisher's on-site studio, there is great redemptive and transformational power in what we do, making the invisible visible, placing our bodies, minds, and hearts in service to story, knowledge, and connection. Remember that you have that power. The power to illuminate unseen forces and drives, the power to stimulate and guide, entertain and educate, magically connecting to a collective identity, one listener at a time. How amazing is that? Thank you for listening.
Keynote.